have with us Rohini Rana, Dolly Rana from Nepal. She is so, the most endearing story about Indian royalty is that all our beautiful women, young girls, go as brides to Nepal. So, and all the Nepalese beautiful girls come here to hill stations, you know. So her daughter is married in Odisha and she's from Avagar in Agra, close to Agra, very close to Agra. And she's married, she's a Rana princess, I don't know, the daughter-in-law. And her husband was the chief of army staff. But, oh God, if you eat on her table. So she's the author of 2 beautiful books. And welcome. And she's known more as Dolly. So it's very tough to even sometimes find her on social media because of that. We also have Asma, who's from Chatari royal family. And I'm very, I know a little bit about the family because one of their family members is a author and lives in Pakistan, Reema Abbasi. So you don't know about it, Asma, but we've spoken about you so often when the book came out, which Meera wrote, and she would swell up with pride talking about her cousin, who's an amazing chef in London. So amazing, welcome. We're waiting for 2 more people, but meanwhile we'll start. Today is a very special day. We are going to launch Rohini's book. So I think we'll start with you and ask you, what was it like going from very, dairy food region of Agra to Nepal, where everything was totally different. So I remember interviewing your nephew who said that his favorite dish is paneer matar. Because
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Anshu. Thank you, Sonali and Manish, for having us here in this beautiful venue and very interesting company. Yes, I am from Avagar in UP, 1 hour's drive from Agra. And I got married in Nepal immediately after I finished college. My husband was a lieutenant at that time, serving in the Nepalese army. And like Anshu says, what were my experiences? The big things one expects is the little things that matter. I think that was so different. Everyone would tell me, oh, it's just like India, don't worry, you won't have to adjust much, Even the script is the same, and a lot of other stuff that I heard like that. And when I said, oh, but my army, I didn't, want something as traumatic as the military because you'd heard of army wives being alone and husbands going off to the front. They said, don't worry. The Nepalese army, the Ranas are all born generals, so you won't have much to contend with there. But that was all not true. I became a total Nepalese army, a soldier's wife, and have trudged behind my husband over the hills and dales of Nepal and across the world as well. So when I got married, I was very young. I was just out of college. And my mother, to her horror, realized that she's engaged and she's getting married in 8 months and she doesn't know how to cook. So my sister-in-law, Rani Anjali Kumari, was put to the task of teaching me. I had done honors in English literature. I put down my Byron and Keats and picked up the ladle and never looked back since then. Having got married there, the customs, the small little customs were so different. Like, they didn't have breakfast. I was asked to come down for lunch the first day I was there, and it was 9:30, so I thought, okay, they have a late breakfast, that's fine. And then these big thals, chandi ke thal with they're called chapris there, full of rice and dal and meat and achar and vegetables all around, arrived. So I'm looking at my watch under the table and saying, did I oversleep? Have I missed breakfast? What's happening here? And then my mother-in-law looked at me and no one explained this to me, And my father-in-law was in the military, my husband, so government offices, they're open from 10 to 5. So everyone eats dal bhat and comes to office. Everyone in Nepal in the old days, and a lot of people still today, eat their lunch at 9:30 and then go to office. And they have a midterm sort of break at about 3 o'clock called Khaja, where they again have beaten rice and vegetables and meat and whatever. So that was the system. Being in boarding school, I hated rice. And having to, sort of contend with it at 9 in the morning wasn't really very pleasant. But because my family in India and my Rana family were both, they were gourmands, they just loved good food, so that was the uniting factor. And I assimilated myself quite easily and quite well since then, from then. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And the first time you told me about the breakfast, I was saying, wow, isn't that a very healthy thing to do as well? Isn't
Actually, it is. Once I followed that for 31 years till I was in the joint family. And if you think of it, it's really good because like nowadays, all the health gurus are telling you to have your main meal in the morning, eat like a king for breakfast and then like a queen or whatever for lunch and then like a knave for dinner. So actually, that is really good tradition, health-wise as well as on the staff because they finish their work by 10, 11 and they have the rest of the day to, laze around. And so it's quite a good tradition, actually. Thank you.
So Asma Chatari is not very far away from Avagar, and I think it's close to Aligarh. Yes. And I know because Reema would drive down every time and be so excited about it. So I know your family is really known for the food, and if I'm not wrong, your mother is also a very good cook. So how did you get into cooking, and how much of it did you imbibe from the family?
I think the most important thing, which is underrated, is eating. If you eat good food, you understand what is happening. And I think that was a privilege I had. My mother's from Jalpaiguri, and my nani, my maternal family, they're from, she's the daughter of the Nawab of Bakhtiarpur. And they used to have this breakfast where there were 52 types of things. So this kind of breakfast thing is huge. And so I always ate good food, but like her, my situation, I didn't have 8 months. My marriage got engaged to someone who was teaching at Cambridge University. And within 3 or 4 weeks, I got married and left. And so I didn't know how to cook at all. And when I went to England, I could not cook. And my husband was cooking for me every day. And he is not a great cook. And he also knew only one thing. And he himself ate every meal in college because that was his part of his tutorial job that he used to go to college to eat. And I ate the same chicken curry and rice every day, which was a real difficult. So I learned to cook because it was a shock. I mean, now, of course, you can Google you can find out everything. But also, most importantly, you can WhatsApp your dog in Delhi for free. But when I got married 30 years ago, my father used to write to me. I used to write to him. There was no phone. It's very easy to forget what life was like then. So it was literally kala pani. You left, it was completely like a cutoff. And so I learned to cook just so, I get emotional every time I say it. Every time I cooked in the aroma of what was coming through my house, my little Cambridge flat, I felt the presence of Ammu. And I missed home so much. I didn't know how to cope with getting married. It's always a big challenge. You people think that you get this girl married to a different setup, she'll settle in. Actually, food is a very important part. And we don't prepare our children for this whole thing that, also, I think it's wrong, and this is for all mother-in-laws. Please do not feed your daughter-in-law what you eat. Let her also eat what she's grew up eating. This is a big jump, but tradition is that, your daughter-in-law will come and have to eat exactly what you're eating. Take some consideration. I'll never forget, I had this conversation with Mahatma Gandhi's great-granddaughter, and she was saying that, there was consideration made that, let's give this girl rice, in that family, when her mother came into this family. I think that people should do that. But so for me, I learned the hard way. I yearned for home. I learned to cook because otherwise I couldn't have lived in the West. I was so homesick. Very different world also 30 years ago.
30 years ago, it was another world. I agree with you. But for everyone who doesn't know this, I think Indian royal families are very eclectic in the sense that if I just was to rattle off, she's from Avagar, married in Gujarat, Chota Udaipur. You got married in Cambridge. Was he also from a?
No, so I'm the only one in my family who married someone who is not from a royal family.
And her daughter is married into Odisha. So I don't even know what happens in a royal kitchen, and it's very interesting. So when I sit with someone, they'll say, okay, so we have Maratha food because so-and-so came from Gwalior. We have, I'm talking about Jammu and Kashmir, they have Himachal food. So I'd like to welcome Padmini here, who's now, she's cooking the dinner, and she's cooked a splendid lunch for us at the Royal Pavilion. So, and they are, of course, related. Yeah. So, what was it like for you to get married and come to Chota Udaipur? And where exactly is Chota Udaipur? You must tell them.
Chota Udaipur is close to Baroda. It's like 90 kilometers from Baroda, east of Gujarat. So for me, like coming from UP, there was a lot of change regarding the food part. And a family, like all the daughter-in-laws are from different states. Like my mother's from Jharkhand, so she's got a lot of Nepalese touch. So she has her own Nepalese cooking. And there's somebody from Chhattisgarh, so we hardly have much of Gujarat. So that's what made me include the Gujarat cuisine into my thali. Like things which were cooked in Chota Udaipur, like the makke ki roti and that vada, urad vada. So all those things I've included in the thali. So for me, cooking has been like, I wouldn't say like I'm very fond of cooking. I don't like to do everyday cooking, but yeah, just once in a while, it's great. I did grow up with seeing my parents cook, so they've been like big inspiration for me. So yes, that's about it.
So very interestingly, this is a question that always intrigues me. So the royal families are very evolved. They've traveled, they've studied overseas, they're exposed to all kinds of cultures within their kitchen because of this marrying a royal, no matter which part of the country, or Nepal for that matter. But everyone adapts to their own region's cooking and whatever is available. You know, like that bhutte ki khees, which they can cook very well in Rajasthan because they have so much of bhutta. So would you like to talk about how much of your food is adapted to Nepalese food, regional food?
Okay, so I come, like we're talking about different states, Anshu just mentioned, and getting married. So I'm from Avagar, which is in UP. My mother's from Rajgarh, which is in Madhya Pradesh. My nani was from Sarguja. Dadi was, from Sarguja. And like Padmini says, like we're all over, and I think one, inculcates just little bits of whatever your nani cooked, your dadi cooked, your mother cooked. So it's all a great learning experience, I think, And I feel for myself in a kitchen, I feel it's like a gurukul, that relationship between the guru and the shishya, not under the banyan tree, but here we are all practicing in the kitchen, and we are learning from our mothers, we are learning from our mother-in-laws, our mothers, our dadis, our nannies, and inculcating and then concocting our own cuisine, which today would be called fusion cuisine. So in Nepal, my mother-in-law is from Himachal, my grandmother-in-law was from Himachal, and all my aunts were from India, from Suket and different areas. All the daughters married in India, so we have this great fusion in our family. But the Ranas are very strong men, and basically it's the Rana cuisine that predominates. So.
But how much of it is regional? I mean, how much of it do you adapt from what's available, what you can bring into the kitchen?
Regional, it is totally Nepali. And I think when I say the Rana cuisine, which is my first book is all about, is influenced a lot by India, because the starter of the dynasty was Jang Bahadur, who helped the British, unfortunately, in the raid of Oudh in 1857 mutiny. So he came first time to Lucknow, and he imbibed a lot of the Awadh culture. So the first white buildings that came up in the Kathmandu Valley were after this tenure, of his tenure, going to India and coming back. Otherwise, it was all brick buildings. So he brought back the stucco Indian architecture. He brought back, we say Hajur, which I think is a little, form of Hazur, even our clothes and a lot of our culture and the finesse, a lot of the cuisine. He brought back the khansamas. That was one thing he brought back along with a lot of wealth and jewelry from Awadh. So that was nice. And so the khansamas came, but because the Ranas were very rigid, they were very puritanical Hindus, where only a Brahmin lady or a Brahmin gentleman would be allowed to cook their meals in the kitchens. That also the lady would wear one vastra. Everyone would be sitting on the floor, eating on a wooden pirka, it was called, on a wooden stool, you know. And the Brahmin lady would be serving. And that was only if you ate rice. The rice was the pure thing. It was called pure, you know, choko. Choko is a Nepali word meaning pure. So if you were eating rice, you would eat it in the kitchen, seated on the floor, served by a Brahmin or by a lady of your own household and caste. Then the khansamas came in. They were, of course, Muslim gentlemen. So they used to have a kitchen outside. But you could never eat what they cooked inside your kitchen. You had to eat it outside for lunch or tea with the beaten rice and with roti. You couldn't eat it with the rice, or you would be considered impure, you know. So regional was that. My second book is actual regional cuisine of the 10 different main ethnic communities of Nepal.
And it's so beautifully designed. It's like a visual treat as well. So we'll be launching it just now. So Asma, I'll twist my question to you into three things which always intrigue me. Chatari, Rampur, the whole of Awadh, all the talukdaris. How different is each other's cuisine, and how much of it have you incorporated in whatever you serve? Have you ever, fusion, taken it forward? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's interesting because this, the example that both of them are giving of, it being literally everybody in the household coming here. I think this is a royal family problem because it doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you're from royal family, they'll get you married. So this is the issue that, they're only looking for royal. So we used to have an issue in my mother's side of the family where a lot of girls came from the Nizam family. And the hassle that, because in Bengal, we don't have that much chilies. There used to be, hi, what is this khana? There used to be this rona, pitna, because, they couldn't take it. So, abhi tak in all our weddings, wo Kolkata ka biryani that is served in my mother's family, always served with a side of Hyderabadi mirchi ka salan. Otherwise, you'll find people getting off in their ghagras and things and walking off. Because this biryani is not good enough. It's a real problem, because all of us are stuck in this cycle. So this is the one thing that unites us all, because people are looking for other royal families. So whether you eat rice or you eat roti or whether you have rice for breakfast, they don't care. They're just getting, in our own level, we'll get married. So for me, it was interesting because I have picked what I want from Chatari family and I've picked what I want from my mother's side of the family, and it is on the menu. So the biryani that is made in my father's side of the family, I'm sorry, I know we are all from the same region, around there. This North Indian biryani is not biryani. For me, usme aloo nahi hai, I don't like it. So I only make the biryani of Calcutta. I chose my mother's side. So I don't do fusion because that would be wrong. So I keep, like Abu's side of the family, Ammu's side of the family, I keep it very, very separate. Except that desserts, I have made a mix between double ka roti and shahi tukra. So when I do shahi tukra, people look and say, it looks a bit like double ka meetha. This is the one thing that the Hyderabadi connections and Nizam family connections, because my family was very closely connected with the Nizam. My great-grandfather was the Prime Minister of the Nizam and head of the Nizam Trust. He divided out the jewelry, which I will never forget seeing as a child, the vault of the jewelry of the Nizam family. But he divided it, had this reputation, and divided it out equally. So we have a lot of Hyderabadi influence as well. But I try to keep it separate because I think that I need to respect where this has come from, that there are stories behind it, and I shouldn't fuse it because already these stories, 2 generations down, people may not know. And it is my duty. And if I start fusing it, my children will be confused. And if they don't know the story, how will they tell their children? And so this is why I don't do it. But I think it's absolutely fine for other people to do it because they have a bigger clan. My clan is very small. Yeah.
But so now I'll come back to the other question which keeps intriguing me is, how different is Rampur from family-wise? Otherwise, we all know, but what the Nawab of Rampur, what they would eat, or the Mahmudabad family, or Chatari, How is it different?
It is very different. It is very different. Rampur, I mean, of course, Naved Bhai, I think, is coming. Naved Bhai is coming?
On Sunday.
Yeah, yeah. So my cousin, Naved Bhai is coming, so he'll be able to explain. There is a big difference. First of all, they're Shias. They had a very strong history of having cooks in from Persia. So their influence, and in fact, all the recipes written in the kitchen are all in Farsi. So they have this strong, so their stew, the stew of Rampur is a Persian stew. It's a Persian, there are things, you don't see haldi at all in it. You don't see zira in their food. So these are the spices you will find missing in Rampur cuisine. And that's what makes it, and that tar gosht. So they have a very strong difference. And Mahmudabad, again, very different, but again, strong Shia influence. So with Shia influence comes the very strong Farsi influence of the cooks. So you won't find that in pure Sunni households like us. Chatari will be, ironically, the strongest influence is Rajput, because we are Muslim Rajputs. So you will find a very strong Rajput. So there is a very thing, so our cuisine is closer to, royal Rajput cuisine than any of the other, like Rampur or Mahmudabad. Chatari cuisine is more close to a royal Rajput cuisine than others. So I think it also depends on what your background is. But for those two regions, definitely their Shia connections meant that for many, many generations, they had cooks from Iran who brought in these different levels of spicing, lightness of touch, less use of certain spices, which we use more heavily. That's where the difference comes in the cuisine. Spices makes a big difference. That's where you see the difference.
So you just mentioned that your mother is from Jalpaiguri. Now that is very difficult to compare to what Chatari is. So tell me a little bit about that food, and was it incorporated in your family kitchen?
Yes, I mean, in my mother only ate rice, Abba only eats roti. And the thing is that this is a very serious thing in a household because you need a different kind of gravy. When you're eating rice with your hands, you need a gravy. And then when you eat roti, you cannot have a soggy kind of roti getting. So we used to have too much food on our table because Abba would see fish and move this dish from me. Because he grew up in Aligarh, Aligarh and Chatari, he could not take fish on the table. So they don't have, so I know that, you mentioned that there's rivers and you have fish in Nepal. But Aligarh is Aligarh and Chatari, no fish. You see a fish, you run because you don't know where it's come from. So he didn't have, so it was very separate. They ate separate food. So I have incorporated them separately, as I said, out of respect, because I shouldn't, on my house table, it never fused. Abba never ate rice. Ammu never ate roti, ever. So I don't want to mix that. So we keep it separate. Only thing is that the thali in my restaurant, we do have luchi and we have rice. We have both. But not roti. The moment I put chapati, I would not put rice next to it. I always tell people, please don't have burritos because there are people who are, a lot of people do wraps, Indian-inspired wraps, where they put rice inside a chapati. And I think, we don't do this. We don't eat rice and roti together. Only that we do it in the thali because people pick, they eat either the rice or the puri, and some people eat both, but that's fine.
So Padmini, you tell me about the fusion and the adaptation of local food, and how did you react to what was being cooked in your kitchen?
I actually agree with this. Something similar happened with my household. My father would not touch my mother-in-law's Nepalese food, and my mother-in-law would not like the Gujarati thali. So in the thali which I have made, I've included the tribal food. A lot is being inspired by the tribal food, the Adivasi, because Chota Udaipur is an Adivasi belt. So a lot of food is very healthy. I've not included wheat in it. It's gluten-free, so there's jowar, makka, and all the other good things, and no onions also. So it's like very sattvic. And as far as the household is concerned, everybody has their own choices. There's not much of a fusion, like they have their own preferences. So that's how the food is cooked. So according to whoever likes what.
So we are here in the first ever Asian Vegetarian Food Festival. Kudos to SAG for bringing that initiative in. And so I am very intrigued to find out, I mean, we all know we are, we have Salahuddin and Zeba here. Can I request for another chair, please?
One more chair.
So, everyone who ate lunch today was licking their fingers because of these two lovely, this couple who cooked for us, along with Padmini. That's Begum Zeba and Nawab Sahab Salahuddin from Balasinor. And I'm sure all of us know one surname in the film world called Parveen Babi, and we always wonder. So they are the Babi royals who came from Babi village in Afghanistan. And then three brothers. One went to Balasinor, the eldest, Nawab Sahab.
Went to Radhanpur and the youngest was Junagadh. So we are basically the Babi Yusufzai Pathan dynasty.
So, they also have another very unique story to them. Of course, it's a very beautiful little palace hotel they run, but it's surrounded with a dinosaur park. Or you'd like to tell us, because I've not been there and I'm dying to go and see because I keep seeing beautiful pictures of fossils and dinosaur.
So we run the Garden Palace as a heritage homestay with 6 rooms, and of course our family is, we specifically do, it's a culinary journey when you come to us at Balasinor. But we also have the dinosaur fossil excavation site at village Rayoli, which is about 15 kilometers from our place. It is one of the 3rd largest dinosaur fossil excavation sites in the world, which we have a museum now thanks to the government of Gujarat and the Department of Tourism. And it is being run very well. And my sister sitting there, she looks after it.
So Alia is we all call her the dinosaur princess without her feeling bad about it.
So it's a beautiful combination. The food is supervised. Of course, it was my mother who started the culinary journey, and now my wife, Begum Zeba, she has taken over and she runs and takes care of the food part of the family.
So since it's Women's Day today, I'll say that Begum Saab and Begum Saab have 2 things in common. They're both beautiful women, and they both cook finger-licking kebabs. I had the pleasure of eating her kebabs and now yours. Oh my God, it's amazing. Of course, we have vegetarian kebabs today, but you can't, it's almost like a dhoka. I mean, it's so good. So Zeba, we'll start with you because it's Women's Day. Yeah. And we'd like to know which part of the world did you come from?
I've come from Karnataka. Yeah, so people generally ask me, how do you manage from Karnataka to like Gujarat? It's a long story, of course, but now after almost 10 years of my marriage, now I've come into my mother-in-law's shoes. So I'm trying to fit into it still, but she's the guiding light, of course.
You fit
Of the
in very
tunnel.
well, can I tell you?
Thank you. Yeah, so she's the guiding light of our tunnel. So if there's anything which I'm not getting, then she's of course there to help me. But yeah, right now I'm doing the cooking part. I'm taking
So how much of Karnataka food did you get into? So which family are you from?
my mother belongs to the Savnur family.
Savnur, I
yes.
thought as much, yes.
So there's a princely state called Savnur in Karnataka. So my mother's from that side. So of course we have a few of the, like if you have tasted today, there was dessert and 2-3 main courses also from that side, from my family. And of course my mother-in-law, she too has the treasure, the whole
Treasure
thing
trove.
treasure of recipes. So there's a lot into it.
So we've just understood what Chatari cuisine is all about. Salahuddin, you tell us what is Babi cuisine all about and how much of it is incorporated from Gujarat and how much was brought from there?
Historically speaking, I would like to go back to what cuisines and families like ours is all about. It's actually, say a lady here, for instance, it is Zeba, who's come from Karnataka. She's got married to the Balasinor family. So she's brought her recipes into the Balasinor household, and those recipes sort of get imbibed into the Balasinor treasure trove of recipes. Similarly, my mother came from Palanpur in North Gujarat. So the Palanpur recipes came into the Balasinor household and got imbibed into the Balasinor household. And so on and so forth. So it's basically all the dishes that are served are from different parts of the family. The ladies who come into the family have brought their own recipes, and those have got imbibed into the family recipes of Balasinor. But what is interesting about our food is there's a lot of flavor to it, rather than it being spicy and oily and just like the normal cuisine that's there. We take care that it is not spicy. There's a lot of flavor to it. It's more like home-style Mughlai cuisine to an extent. You can have a heavy lunch, whether be it vegetarian or the non-vegetarian, and be ready for a next meal in the evening. Unlike say Awadhi food, for instance, because आप एक बार अवधि आप खा ले तो शाम को शायद आप दूसरा खाने में थोड़ी दिक्कत आएगी. So our food is easy on the stomach. There's a lot of lips packing flavor on the palate, and it's also, you can call it a bit of fusion food, because my mother, as a child and as you know her learning experience, similarly with Zeba, both didn't like cooking. And when they got married, they started adapting to cooking. And like for my mother's side, my nana, when my nani passed away, she had to cook. And because my nana was very fond of food, she's there. And after she's come into the family, she never cooked. She started learning how to cook after that. And I think she's really done wonderfully well. So the entire the recipes or the food, you can call it a bit of fusion food, because there's a lot of tweaking done. Old recipes were very heavy on the stomach. They've been tweaked to suit the current day needs, easy food, so to make it more like everyday food. And that is what we've done. Yeah. Also, sorry, there's a lot of continental dishes also.
Yes,
because
amazing,
my mother had a stint in the south of France. When she was a child, she used to go to the Plaza Athénée in France. Brush shoulders with Princess Grace of Monaco and all those people at that time, Queen Nariman and all of them. So, I think those have got like the crepes Roussettes. We also make a lot of desserts. I make desserts also. So we have a lot of desserts also.
But what about Barbie, the village? Any food that's still being cooked, which is totally?
So most of the people who had lunch today tried the Zarda-e Jamiyat. So that is named after my grandfather, His Highness Nawab Jamiyat Khan Ji is my grandfather. And he was very fond of this particular dessert. So this dessert has come down from there, and it's been ever since going there. It was handwritten by my grandmother, and then it's been, earlier on ladies used to sit and grate, and it used to take a lot of time. We have something called the Shab-e Barat ka halwa, which is made out of wheat. It takes almost 24 hours to make, because it has to be remade again and again. So that's an age-old recipe. We have the lasagna khima, which is again, it used to be a breakfast recipe, which has been adapted now to be a recipe for all the meals. So those are there, and that's the adaptation.
So since we are talking about vegetarianism today, and this is the first ever such a large format vegetarian food festival, kudos to the Bahitis for putting it together, SAG. So each one of you must tell me how much of vegetarian food has been part of your daily eating. I mean, I've eaten at a Maratha table where there was nothing vegetarian. But, so, I mean, I know that, traditionally there was a lot of non-vegetarian, but as the world is moving more towards vegetarianism, how much of it is part of your food?
I think in my household, we cook non-veg twice a week. Other days, it's all vegetarian. So like weekly, twice or thrice at the most.
What about your family? Is there vegetarian recipes which are unique to Chitari?
Yes, there are. And I think that the interesting thing is that I've not seen it anywhere else. Also, we make, in my mother's family, they make kheer with pyaz, with onions, and you can't guess what it is. A bit like your halwa today. The halwa today, we couldn't guess what it was. I knew immediately this wasn't what everyone was guessing. So this whole thing, I think one of the quirks of being in a royal family is that sometimes, when families which had, the privilege and, which is not everybody's, to play around with ingredients, because all of this costs money. But then they would go around playing games with using ingredients to surprise their guests. Like, guess what?
Dhoka.
So there are lots of these recipes.
Dhoka recipes.
Yeah. So in my father's
How
family,
is famous?
May I butt in? you know, each of our guests who comes and stays with us and dines with us, when Zardai Jamiyat is served, these guests, there are almost 30 guesses. I think out of 100, maybe 2 people have got it right up till now.
Yeah, I don't know, because the texture is impossible. It's like the pyaz ka kheer. But we have always, because I grew up in Calcutta, Calcutta has always had a meat-free day. I mean, only now in the West they're talking about meatless Monday. The West has learned a lot from us, but doesn't want to give credit to the East for anything. But we've always had a lot of vegetarian food. Also in a hot country, this is the only kind of food you can actually digest, which is safe, you know. So this is all fine. But my father's family, I believe, used to have eggs made with dal and chawal. The recipe is lost in the midst of time, but I have met endless people who've said, oh, you are the family where they used to have this egg made with, you know, rice and dal. But no one seems, their recipe is lost. So there are all these things. So my family for a long time, because we are Muslim Rajputs, we have an entire clan which is Hindus who are vegetarian. So we always had to have a parallel cuisine in all our weddings. And it's sad because no one has kept records of this. I am now slowly clawing back and finding all these incredible recipes. So, but I think every family, you know, has these recipes. And I think that the most important thing is that I think most people forget it's a privilege to eat. We should thank God that we are eating, and whether it's vegetables or it's anything else, it's a privilege. You know, there are enough people who are hungry in the world. So whether you eat vegetables or you don't eat vegetables, I think I'm very grateful I eat.
So your chonkas and your vegetables, that deserves a... So your chonka vegetables, my God. Tell us a little bit about the vegetarian Nepalese side.
In Nepal, vegetables are very important. The main thing is they have to be seasonal, which is lost today with the cold storage world. And you have to have a green item. The saag, whether it's mustard greens or it's spinach or it's chamsur, you know, all different you have to have a green vegetable for each meal. In Nepal, everyone will eat dal, bhat, tarkari. Whether there's meat or not, it's tarkari. Tarkari meaning vegetables. So on a normal, you know, day, people would eat potatoes is a must. And then there would be cauliflower if it's seasonal, you know, like I said, the saag if it's seasonal, peas, green onions, tomatoes. There has to be a achar. It's called a fresh achar, like our chutney, what we call in India chutney. In Nepal, it's called achar. One would be Purano achar, which is pickled, you know, and kept. And then it has to be a fresh chutney, which is also achar. So whether it's radish grated or, you know, and then you use the sesame seeds and the tempering that Anshu's talking about. That bengan can be, charcoal broiled, and then it's tempered with mustard oil and fenugreek seeds. So vegetables play a very important part in Nepalese cuisine. Really, so
since you joined us late, I'd not start with vegetarian. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about some of the special things that are being cooked in your kitchen, and then go on to vegetarianism.
With the non-veg? Or
Any veg, non-veg. We want to know a little more about your kitchen.
yes.
So,
If you go for the non-veg thing, we have, like what you have tasted today, Goteka pulao. We have a non-veg version of it that is Motia pulao, which is very famous. Then we have Murge Khosro, and we have Lasagna Keema, of course. But we have a vegetarian version to that also. Slowly, we are trying to, bring up the vegetarian versions
Vegetarianism
of
is
it.
getting in, so.
Because my father-in-law was pure non-vegetarian. He never liked vegetarian food much. Salahuddin has limited choices to vegetarian food. My mother-in-law likes vegetarian. Aliapa likes vegetarian. So we do cook vegetarian food, but because of them, slowly I'm trying to tweak a lot of non-vegetarian dishes to a vegetarian version of it. Like Subs ke Shami Kebab, which you had today. There's a non-veg version to it, which is Shami Kebab Bala Sanor. So Haryali Ki Nazakat, which you tasted today, that's a very unique recipe of our vegetarian kitchen. Then we have, what else?
We have the Murg Safeda pulao, the
That's
Sab
a non-veg.
Safeda pulao.
Yeah, that's a
So
non-veg
both
version.
versions, vegetarian that's cooked in milk. We have, of course, the dahi bhindi is there. We have something called the dal
Dal
bhindi also,
bhindi.
which is urad ki dal with bhindi. dry urad ki dal with
Yes.
bindi. That is there. You tried the dahi wale baigan today,
They
We
were
have,
amazing, amazing.
We have zamini salan.
which is made out of
which is
peanuts.
Peanuts.
How
So that is
interesting.
there.
Then
The-
we have.
One of my comfort food at home is something called meathi dal, but it is not like our Gujarati dal. It is made with a lot of khopra and peanuts, and it is definitely not like the Gujarati meathi dal,
It's a palan
and it's
puri.
had with plain rice. The another very important thing, dish, and a very simple dish we used to serve. In fact, we used to serve it for the Maharajas Express guests. We hosted the luxury train, the Maharajas Express, for 8 years in Balasinore. We were the only ones hosting them in Gujarat. It is the Palanpuri tomato ki chutney and
Vagareli
Vagareli
khichdi.
khichdi. Very simple but authentic vegetarian food,
There's
and it's
one more
really good.
dish called keema gatta badam korma. So we have keeme ke gatte in badam ka korma
How interesting.
Which is tweaked with soya keema for the vegetarians.
for the vegetarians, of course.
Before we end for today, I'd like to say that Salahuddin, for once you are outnumbered, and it's Women's Day, so I hope you don't mind that. And I'd
So
implore
it is the women of our house who are actually responsible for such lovely food. And I think it's all about, all of our families, it's all about the food, be it anywhere, whether it's north, south, east or west.
That's true. But thank you everyone for this very, very interesting panel, and it's opened my mind even more to the world of the kitchen of the kings, you know. It's amazing. Thank
May
you.
I also take the opportunity, I think on all our behalves, to thank the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, SARC, Kitchens of the Kings, Food for Thought Fest for having us over here and giving us this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I think they deserve a very big applause.
Thank you, Anshu.